Ready for a deep dive. We're going to explore a local legend that's, it's shrouded in mystery and more than a little spooky.
Yeah, it's one that's captivated people for, probably for generations at this point.
Exactly. We're talking about the Ada Witch,
Hmm.
a name that's become synonymous with Grand Rapids ghost stories.
And the really interesting thing is there's no single definitive version of the story. We've actually got a stack of articles and books here. My Michigan, Haunted Houses of Grand Rapids, Ghosts of Grand Rapids, even some online forums. Each one adds its own twist, its own little details.
So how are we going to try to untangle this web of stories?
Well, we're going to start by piecing together the most common threads of the legend, looking at the historical context, and then we'll examine the evidence or lack thereof.
It's like separating fact from folklore, and maybe trying to understand why some stories just refuse to die.
Exactly. Let's dive in with the most prevalent version of the legend. It takes us back to the 19th century to Ada, Michigan, specifically Findlay Cemetery. Picture this: a love triangle, a husband, an alleged affair.
Okay, that's already setting the stage for some serious drama.
Right. Now add in a jealous husband, consumed by rage.
So what happened?
Legend has it that this husband followed his wife and her supposed lover to the cemetery.
Oh boy.
A struggle ensued, a fight, ultimately leading to the death of all three people involved.
A triple demise in a cemetery. Talk about a recipe for a haunting.
And that's exactly what people claim to experience at Findlay Cemetery. Sightings of a mysterious lady in white drifting among the tombstones. Sounds of a struggle echoing in the night as if that fateful fight is replaying.
And I bet some people even feel an unsettling presence.
You got it. A feeling of being watched. Like someone or something is always lurking nearby.
Those personal experiences, those eerie details, that's what makes these stories stick with you. But we have to ask the question, is there any truth to it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It seems like every good ghost story has at least a grain of truth to it.
You'd think so, right? But here's the catch. For all the spooky tales and supposed sightings, the historical record tells a different story.
You mean like official documents and accounts from back then?
Exactly. And when we dug into those records, we found absolutely no evidence of a triple murder in Ada's history, at least not one that fits the timeline of the legend.
So no jealous husband, no love triangle ending in a deadly confrontation.
Not that we could find. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Remember how I mentioned people leaving trinkets on a particular tombstone, believing it to belong to the Ada Witch?
Yeah, you see that a lot with these local legends. It's
Yeah.
like people need a physical spot to focus their belief on.
It's true. And in this case, that tombstone actually belongs to a woman named Sarah McMillan.
Sarah McMillan.
And Sarah, well, she died in 1870.
1870. That doesn't line up with the legend at all.
Exactly. And get this. She didn't die at the hands of a vengeful husband, but from typhoid fever.
Typhoid fever. Wow, talk about a buzzkill for a good ghost story. But seriously, it's kind of sad.
How so?
Well, Sarah McMillan's real story gets completely overshadowed by this legend. Her life and death reduced to a spooky tale.
That's a good point.
And it makes you wonder, why do we cling to these dramatic narratives even when the evidence points in a completely different direction?
That's a question that has puzzled storytellers and scholars for ages. Why are we so drawn to these tales of tragedy and the supernatural?
Maybe there's something about a good ghost story that just speaks to something deep within us.
It's a thought-provoking question, for sure.
And it leads to another question.
Yeah.
How did Sarah McMillan's grave become the focal point of the Ada Witch legend in the first place?
Right. Was it a case of mistaken identity, or is there something more to it?
It's a real head-scratcher.
It is, and it's one we're going to explore further in our next part, along with some other intriguing twists and turns in this legend.
Stay tuned, because this deep dive is far from over. So last time we were talking about Sarah McMillan
Right.
and how her story got all tangled up with the Ada Witch legend. It just seems so strange that her grave became the focal point.
It is intriguing, isn't it?
Like, was it just a case of mistaken identity?
It's possible, especially with these old cemeteries. Sometimes records are lost or graves get unmarked, and over time, stories get mixed up.
It's like a giant game of telephone.
Exactly.
But here's something else I've been thinking about. What if the Ada Witch isn't actually confined to just Findlay Cemetery?
That's an interesting thought.
Well, we've talked about how there are all these different versions of the legend, and some of the sources we found mentions supposed Ada Witch sightings in other locations, like on nearby roads.
Oh, you mean like those stories about Honey Creek Road and Egypt Valley Avenue?
Exactly. And there were even whispers about Seidman Park.
I've heard those too. Apparently, some people believe she roams those woods.
It's almost as if the legend has expanded beyond the boundaries of the cemetery.
It's true. You see that happen a lot with these local legends. They start in one place, and then like ripples on a pond, they spread out further and further.
The more people that hear about it, the more the story grows, and the more places she's supposedly cited.
Precisely. And the human mind is wired to look for patterns and connections.
So if you hear about the Ada witch haunting a cemetery, and then you see something strange on a nearby road,
Your brain might automatically link those two things together.
even if there's no real connection.
Exactly. It's like our own personal biases and expectations can influence what we see and hear.
So someone who's already heard all the spooky stories about the Ada witch, they might be more likely to interpret a shadowy figure in a graveyard or a strange noise in the woods as evidence of the supernatural.
Absolutely. It's the power of suggestion.
And imagine places like Findlay Cemetery only amplify that feeling.
Oh, definitely. There's something inherently eerie about old cemeteries at night.
All those tombstones, the silence, the darkness.
It's the perfect setting for the imagination to run wild.
And when you factor in the weight of the stories, the legends,
It's no wonder people report strange experiences.
I can see why Findlay Cemetery has become such a hotspot for paranormal investigators and ghost hunters.
Oh yeah, it's a popular spot. You'll find all sorts of people there.
Yeah.
From serious researchers with EMF readers and EVP recorders to groups of friends just looking for a spooky good time.
I bet. And I imagine there's some ethical considerations with all of that, too.
Definitely.
I mean, on the one hand, you've got people who are genuinely interested in the paranormal, and they approach their investigations with respect and sensitivity.
Trying to learn more about the history and the people who are buried there.
Exactly. But then you also have those who might be more interested in cheap thrills or internet fame.
The ones who might not be as mindful of the fact that they're walking through a place where people are laid to rest.
Right. It's important to remember that these places are sacred to some.
A delicate balance indeed.
It is. But, you know, speaking of finding balance,
Yeah.
we came across something during our research that was just too strange not to share.
What's that?
Apparently, someone was selling dirt from the grave of the Ada witch on eBay.
You're kidding!
I'm serious.
Dirt from the grave.
That's what the listing said.
People will try to sell anything online these days.
It's really unbelievable. Like, what are you supposed to do with a baggie of cemetery dirt?
I have no idea.
Use it to summon the Ada witch in your backyard.
Maybe. Or maybe they just sprinkle it on their breakfast cereal for a little extra crunch.
Okay, now you're just being ridiculous.
I know. But it's just so bizarre.
It really is. But on a serious note, it does make you think about how easily these legends can be exploited.
Oh, absolutely. There's always someone looking to cash in on a good story.
Especially when it comes to the paranormal.
It's true. Whether it's haunted tours, ghost hunting equipment, or bags of cemetery dirt, there's a whole industry built around our fascination with the unknown.
It's a strange world out there.
It sure is.
So we've got a legendary haunting, a case of mistaken identity, and even a little eBay weirdness thrown in for good measure. Where do we go from here?
Well, as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I think it's time to grapple with the bigger questions. What does the enduring power of the Ada Witch legend tell us about ourselves? About our relationship with belief storytelling and the unknown?
Those are some big questions indeed.
They are, but they're ones worth pondering.
I agree.
So let's dive in and see what insights we can uncover.
Well, here we are, back again. After spending 2 parts diving deep into this Ada Witch legend, I feel like we've uncovered more layers than we ever expected.
It's true. We've gone from a seemingly simple ghost story to a much broader conversation about folklore belief and how easily truth and fiction can get all tangled up.
Right. And I think at this point, after all our research and discussions, we still don't have any definitive answers about the Ada Witch.
Nope. It remains an enigma.
So where does that leave us? Are we just left with more questions than answers?
In a way, yes. But, I think that's part of what makes this whole thing so fascinating. Well, think about it. Does it really matter if we can definitively prove or disprove the existence of the Ada Witch? The story itself, the legend, it has a life of its own, passed down through generations, embellished and reshaped with each telling.
That's true. It's like, even without concrete proof, the legend has become ingrained in the fabric of Grand Rapids.
Exactly.
People tell the story, they visit the cemetery, maybe they even catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of their eye.
And they feel that little shiver down their spine.
Right. It's like the feeling you get when you know a good story is more than just a story.
It's tapping into something deeper, something primal.
Totally. And it makes you realize that maybe the power of belief, the need to believe in something beyond the everyday, is just as powerful as any ghost story.
More powerful, maybe, because it's something that's inside all of us.
That's a good point. It's like when you were a kid and you'd stay up late telling ghost stories with your friends.
Yeah.
It wasn't really about whether the stories were true or not. It was about the thrill of the unknown, that feeling of excitement and a little bit of fear.
Absolutely. And those emotions, they stay with you long after the story is over.
They do. And in a way, I think the Ada Witch legend taps into those same emotions.
It reminds us that it's okay to embrace a little mystery, to let our imaginations run wild.
To acknowledge that some things in life might just be beyond explanation.
Exactly.
So the next time you find yourself in Ada, maybe driving down Honey Creek Road after dark, or taking a stroll through Findlay Cemetery, remember the story of the Ada Witch?
Let it be a reminder that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that keep us guessing.
The ones that linger in our minds.
Yeah.
Long after the campfire is burned out.
And who knows, maybe if you listen closely enough, you just might hear the whisper of a ghostly tale carried on the wind.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the Ada Witch legend. But we want to hear from you. What local legends have captured your imagination? What stories from your neck of the woods just won't seem to die?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those imaginations running wild.
Until next time.